A rich man sells his daughter to pay off a lost bet, but the horse saw everything and does something. Comment on what you think will happen. Your opinion is very important, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. Your help is very important. The December sun beat down on the dusty yard of the small spread in Harmony Creek, Kentucky, where Lily was playing with colorful pebbles she'd found near the well. At 4 years old, the curly-haired girl with curious brown eyes didn't understand the worries that plagued her father, Ben Miller, a 42-year-old rancher who paced nervously across the porch of their simple clapboard house. The man, his skin tanned by the sun and hands calloused from hard work, watched the dirt road with growing anxiety. His gambling debts had turned into a nightmare that had been consuming him for months. Each night was a torture of insomnia. Each dawn brought the weight of shame and despair. Ben had lost almost everything at poker games and betting on cockfights, vices he had developed after losing his wife 2 years before. By the wooden fence, an 8-year-old white horse watched the scene with intelligent, alert eyes. Snowdrift, as he was called, had belonged to the late Sarah, Ben's wife and Lily's mother. The noble animal maintained a special connection with the family, especially with the little girl, as if he understood it was his duty to protect her. The sound of hooves on the road made Ben swallow hard. Colonel Hank Thompson, 55 years old, stepped down from his buckboard pulled by 2 black horses, his imposing and well-dressed figure contrasting with the simplicity of the place. The cattle dealer was known throughout the county for his wealth and influence, but also for his questionable collection methods. "Ben, my friend," said Hank with a cold smile, adjusting his Stetson hat, "I've come to settle our little matter. It's been 3 months since we talked about your dues." The man's voice was calm, but it carried an implicit threat that made Ben tremble. The debt had grown with absurd interest, turning the initial $1,000 into an impossible sum to pay. The rancher knew that Hank wasn't known for patience or mercy. "Colonel, I tried to get the money. I tried to sell the cattle I had left, but it wasn't enough," Ben stammered, his hands sweating. "I need more time, please." Hank walked across the yard, observing the poverty that surrounded the family. His calculating eyes stopped on Lily, who continued playing oblivious to the adults' conversation. The girl was wearing a faded sundress, but she was clean and well cared for, evidence of the love she received from her father. "Time is a luxury you can't afford, Ben," Hank replied, taking a yellowed paper from his pocket. "Your debt has already exceeded $5,000 with interest. You don't have that amount, you don't have enough assets to cover it, but I'm a businessman, and I always find solutions." Ben's heart raced when he realized Hank's gaze fixed on his daughter. A terrible feeling grew in his chest, a premonition that made him recoil instinctively. "The girl is healthy, well cared for. She can work on my property, help with household chores. In exchange, I consider your debt settled," Hank said with frightening naturalness, as if he were negotiating cattle. "No!" Ben shouted, awakened from his initial paralysis. "Lily is my daughter. She's not a bargaining chip." Hank approached dangerously, his voice lowering to a threatening whisper. "Then would you rather I take your property, throw you both out on the street? Because those are your only options, my friend. Either the girl comes with me for a few months, or you lose everything, and she suffers even more in misery." Lily stopped playing when she heard the raised voices. She approached her father timidly, holding onto the hem of his torn jeans. Her innocent eyes alternated between the 2 men, trying to understand the tension that hung in the air. "Daddy," she whispered. In her sweet, childish voice, Ben looked at his daughter, then at Hank, then at the humble house that would be lost anyway. Tears began to stream down his face as the cruel reality imposed itself. There was no way out, no real choice. It was to give Lily up temporarily or see both of them in complete misery. Snowdrift, sensing the danger, approached the fence and whinnied softly, As a warning, the white horse seemed to understand that something terrible was happening, his protective instincts awakening. With a choked voice and a broken heart, Ben knelt before his daughter. "Lily, my princess, you're going to spend a few days with Mr. Thompson. Daddy needs to take care of some important things, but soon, very soon, you'll come home." The girl looked confused at the stranger in fine clothes, then at her father, who was crying. Something in her little heart told her that this was not a game, that something very bad was happening. Hank picked Lily up in his arms with false gentleness, ignoring the girl's sobs as she stretched her little arms out to her father. Ben remained kneeling on the ground, tears streaming down his bearded face as he watched his daughter being taken away by the man who had destroyed his life. "Don't cry, little girl. You'll like my ranch," Hank lied, carrying her to the buckboard. "There are lots of kids there to play with." Lily screamed for her father, her little fists beating on the chest of the stranger who held her. "Daddy! Daddy! I don't want to go. I want to stay with you." Snowdrift neighed loudly, running along the fence as if he wanted to prevent her departure. The white horse stamped his hooves on the ground, agitated, his protective instincts screaming that something terrible was happening to the girl he loved. "Quiet, you beast!" Hank shouted, annoyed by the horse's agitation. "Ben, control that animal or he'll scare my horses." But Ben couldn't move. He was paralyzed by pain and guilt, seeing his only reason for living being torn from his arms. The image of his deceased wife flashed through his mind. Sarah would never forgive him for this. The buckboard began to move, and Lily struggled in the seat next to Hank, crying uncontrollably. Her little brown eyes, now red from crying so much, searched for her father, who was becoming increasingly distant. The man she knew as protector and provider had turned into a stranger who had given her to another stranger. Snowdrift, in a desperate impulse, jumped the low fence and began to follow the buckboard down the dirt road. The white horse kept his distance, but didn't lose sight of the girl he considered his responsibility. His ancestral herd protection instincts had been transferred to that defenseless child. Hank's property was a 2-hour drive away on dusty roads. Throughout the journey, Lily cried until she had no more tears, her little throat becoming hoarse from screaming so much. The cattle dealer tried to calm her with empty promises, but the girl had developed an instinctive fear of the man. "Stop crying, girl. You'll wake the neighbors," Hank grumbled when they arrived at the ranch. "Here you'll learn to be useful, to work for real." The property was large and well-structured, with a 2-story main house, extensive corrals, and several shacks for the workers. The contrast with Lily's humble dwelling was stark, but she felt no admiration, only growing fear. Hank took her to the back of the property, where the pigsties and feed storage were located. "This is where you're going to sleep," he said, pointing to a small room attached to the pigsty. "And tomorrow morning you start working." The place was dirty, with a strong smell of manure and dampness. There was only a thin mattress on the floor and a basin of dirty water. Lily looked around, not understanding how this place could be her new home. "I want my daddy," she whispered, her voice almost fading from crying so much. "Your father doesn't want you anymore," Hank lied cruelly. "That's why he gave you to me. Now you're my property, and you'll do what I say." The man's words pierced the girl's heart like knives. At 4 years old, she couldn't fully understand the meaning, but she felt that something fundamental had broken in her life. Security, love, protection, everything had disappeared. During the first night, Lily cried silently on the dirty mattress, hugging her own body to keep warm. The smell of pigs and the dampness of the place made her feel nauseous. But there was nowhere to run. The complete darkness frightened her, and every strange noise made her jump in fear. Outside, hidden among the trees, Snowdrift kept watch. The white horse had followed the buckboard throughout the journey, keeping a safe distance, but never losing sight of his protégé. Now he sniffed the air, trying to locate exactly where the girl was. The next day, before dawn, Hank knocked on the door of the room violently. "Get up, girl, time to work!" Lily woke up startled, disoriented. For a moment she thought it had all been a terrible nightmare, but the cruel reality imposed itself when she saw the Colonel's hard face. "You're going to clean the corrals, feed the pigs and help in the kitchen," Hank ordered. "And no laziness. Those who don't work don't eat." The girl tried to get up, but her trembling legs could barely support her. The night of terror had left her weak and feverish. Even so, she followed Hank to the corrals, where other workers were already starting their activities. The men looked at Lily with pity and discomfort, but no one dared to question the boss's orders. Everyone knew Hank's violent temper and the consequences of contradicting him. "Take this broom and start cleaning," Hank said, handing over a broom, almost the size of the girl. "I want everything spotless by noon." Lily held the broom with her small hands, but the weight was too much for her age. Each movement was a struggle, each step a difficulty. Tears began to flow again, but now she tried to hide them, instinctively realizing that showing weakness would only make her situation worse. Snowdrift watched everything from afar, his heart breaking at the sight of the girl's suffering. The white horse waited for the right moment to approach, to offer the only comfort he could, his silent and protective presence. 3 months had passed since Lily arrived at Hank's property, and the girl had turned into a shadow of what she once was. Her curly hair, once bright, was now dull and tangled. Her rosy cheeks had disappeared, giving way to a thin and pale face that betrayed malnutrition. Every day began in the same cruel way. Hank knocked on the door of the dirty room at 5 in the morning, shouting orders that the 4-year-old girl could barely understand completely. Lily had learned to get up immediately because the delay resulted in even louder screams and threats that terrified her. "Today you're going to help Zay's wife in the kitchen," Hank ordered one morning in March, when the heat was already punishing the countryside. "And then you're going to clean the pigsties. I want everything sparkling." The girl nodded silently, her vocal cords almost atrophied from so much fear. For weeks, she had spoken only when absolutely necessary, and always in whispers. The trauma had created an invisible barrier between her and the adult world that terrified her. In the kitchen of the main house, Donna Francisca, wife of one of the cowboys, watched Lily with a heavy heart. The 50-year-old woman had raised 6 children and recognized the signs of a deeply traumatized child. "Girl, you need to eat something," Francisca whispered, offering a piece of bread. "You're very thin, very weak." Lily looked at the food with hungry eyes but hesitated. Hank had established strict rules about food. She could only eat the leftovers, and only after all the work was finished. Accepting food before could result in punishment. "You can eat, child. I give permission," Francisca insisted, realizing the child's dilemma. But when Lily was bringing the bread to her mouth, Hank appeared at the kitchen door. His eyes narrowed at the sight, and his voice thundered through the room. "Who said she could eat now?" he roared, snatching the bread from the girl's hands. "The work isn't done, and a bum doesn't eat in my house." Francisca tried to intercede, but Hank silenced her with a threatening look. The woman lowered her head, knowing that any protest could cost her husband his job. The law of the property was simple. Hank commanded, everyone obeyed. Lily was dragged back to the pigsties, where she spent the rest of the day cleaning manure under the scorching sun. Her small hands were bleeding from scrubbing so much, and she felt constant dizziness from hunger and heat. It was in these moments of despair that Snowdrift appeared. The white horse had developed a routine of vigilance, hiding in the shadows of the trees near the corrals. When he saw that no one was watching, he quietly approached the fence where Lily was working. The animal's presence was like a balm for the girl's wounded soul. She ran to the fence and stretched her little hand through the wooden boards, touching Snowdrift's soft muzzle. The horse remained still, allowing her to find comfort in his warmth and presence. "Did you come to get me?" Lily whispered to the horse, her tears wetting the white fur. "Are you going to take me back to my daddy?" Snowdrift responded with soft, low whinnies, as if trying to reassure her. The animal seemed to understand every word, every tear, every moment of despair. His expressive eyes communicated a silent protection that had become the only constant in the girl's chaotic life. During the nights when the cold of the countryside arrived, Lily shivered on the thin mattress, hugging herself to try to keep warm. It was on one of those nights that she noticed a familiar presence outside. Snowdrift had approached the outer wall of the room, and his large body radiated heat through the cracks in the old wood. The girl leaned against the wall, where she felt the horse's heat, finally managing to fall asleep. It was a tenuous physical connection, but it represented the only source of affection and protection in her devastated life. The weeks turned into months, and Lily was progressively fading. Hank made her work from dawn to dusk, always with threats and shouts. The food was scarce, only cold leftovers from the kitchen, often spoiled or unsuitable for a child. "If you don't work right, you won't eat for 3 days," Hank threatened whenever the girl showed tiredness. "And don't think your father's coming to get you. He's happy without you." These cruel words echoed in Lily's mind during the lonely nights. Little by little, she began to believe that she had really been abandoned, that her love for Ben had not been reciprocated. The child's self-esteem plummeted to dangerous levels. The other workers on the ranch watched the situation with growing discomfort, but no one dared to intervene directly. Name removed. The cowboy married to name removed. Even tried to talk to Hank about the treatment given to the girl. "Colonel, the girl is very weak. Maybe if she ate a little more," he suggested timidly. "Are you questioning my methods?" Hank retorted coldly. "If you don't like what you see, you can look for work somewhere else. There are plenty of men needing a job." The threat was clear, and name removed backed down. With 6 children to feed, he couldn't afford to lose his job. The injustice gnawed at him from within, but the survival of his own family spoke louder. It was during a particularly hot afternoon in May that Lily collapsed. She was carrying a bucket of water too, heavy for her age when her legs gave way. The girl fell to the ground, the bucket spilling and creating a puddle of mud. Hank appeared immediately, his face red with anger. "You useless thing! You wasted all the water!" Lily tried to get up, but her fragile body didn't respond. Malnutrition, overwork, and emotional trauma had taken their toll. She remained on the ground, panting, while the world spun around her. "Get up! Get up now!" Hank shouted, but the girl couldn't obey. Snowdrift, who was watching everything hidden, whinnied loudly and began to stamp his hooves on the ground. The horse felt that his protégé was in real danger, and his protective instincts screamed to act. Winter arrived earlier that year in Kentucky, bringing with it cold winds and a dampness that penetrated to the bones. Lily, now 5 months on Hank's property, had become a ghostly figure who wandered around the corrals performing tasks impossible for her age. The fall she had suffered days before had left visible marks on her left knee, which was now swollen and purple. Even so, Hank showed no mercy, forcing her to continue working as if nothing had happened. "Limping or not, the work has to be done," he said coldly, when name removed suggested that the girl needed rest. "Spoiled child needs to learn to be strong." During the cold dawns, Lily woke up with her body aching and trembling uncontrollably. The thin mattress had become even more inadequate with the arrival of the cold, and her torn clothes didn't offer enough protection against the low temperatures. It was on one of those mornings that she woke up feeling something different. Her forehead was hot, and her throat burned like fire. The fever had arrived silently, an inevitable consequence of the malnutrition, cold, and physical exhaustion that her small body had endured for months. "Get up, girl!" Hank shouted as always, but this time Lily couldn't respond immediately. Her vision was blurred, and she felt intense nausea. When she finally managed to get up, she staggered dangerously, holding onto the wall to avoid falling. Hank noticed her condition, but interpreted it as laziness or feigning. "Don't come with that story of being sick," he growled. "I know those tricks. You're going to work just like every day." Lily tried to obey, but with each step she felt the world spinning around her. During the first hour cleaning the corrals, she vomited 3 times, but Hank just shouted for her to continue working. Snowdrift, who maintained his constant watch, immediately realized that something was terribly wrong. The horse approached the fence where Lily was trying to work and whinnied softly, calling her attention. When she looked at him, the animal saw in her eyes a dangerous fever that alarmed him deeply. The girl stretched her trembling hand to touch Snowdrift's muzzle, but this time she couldn't stand up for long. Her legs gave way and she collapsed to the ground, losing consciousness. "Wake up, you faker!" Hank shouted, but Lily didn't respond. Her small body was completely still, her breathing weak and labored. Name Removed, who was passing nearby carrying clothes to wash, dropped everything and ran to the girl. She placed her hand on Lily's forehead and felt the intense heat of the high fever. "Colonel, this girl is very sick. She needs a doctor urgently," Name Removed shouted, momentarily forgetting her fear of the boss. "Doctors cost money," Hank replied with cruel indifference. "If she's faking, she'll get better soon. If not, that's her problem." The coldness of these words shocked even the workers most accustomed to the colonel's harshness. Name Removed looked around for support, but everyone lowered their eyes, knowing that any protest could cost them their jobs. "Take her to that corner behind the storage shed," Hank ordered, pointing to an isolated area of the property. "Out of sight of the others. If she gets better, she'll go back to work. If she doesn't, well, nature takes its course." The words carried a sentence of abandonment that made Name Removed gasp. She knew what Hank was really saying, that if Lily didn't recover on her own, she would be left to languish to her ultimate consequences. With Name Removed's help, Name Removed carried Lily to the indicated location. It was a corner behind a tool shed, only partially protected from the cold wind. They placed the girl on some old feed sacks, the only protection they could arrange without, attracting attention. "I can't do anything more," Name Removed whispered, tears streaming down her face. "If Hank finds out I'm helping, he'll fire my husband." Lily spent the first night alone in that place, delirious with the high fever. She called for her father, for her deceased mother, babbled meaningless words while her small body fought against the disease that consumed her. It was during the second night that Snowdrift made a decision that would change everything. The white horse had located where Lily was hidden and perceived that she was close to a point of no return, his protective instincts silenced by months of impotent observation finally spoke louder than prudence. In the darkness of dawn, Snowdrift jumped the fence and approached silently to the place where Lily lay. The girl was semi-conscious, trembling violently from cold and fever. Her lips had taken on a worrying bluish color. The horse lay down carefully next to the girl, wrapping her small body with his warmth. Snowdrift remained still all night, warming Lily with his own body while she instinctively clung to the soft white fur. For 3 days and 3 nights, this scene was repeated. Snowdrift arrived in the dead of night and remained with Lily until shortly before dawn, when the workers began to move around. The horse brought water in his mouth, allowing the girl to drink small sips that kept her hydrated. On the 4th day, Hank went to check if the girl was still alive. He found her slightly better. The fever had subsided a little, although she was still very weak. "She's still breathing," he murmured with disinterest. "A few more days and we'll know if she's good for anything." But Snowdrift had made another decision. On the 4th night, When Lily managed to stay conscious for longer, the horse did something that would change both their destinies. With extreme care, he lifted her onto his back, holding her delicately with his teeth by her clothes. The girl was too weak to protest or fully understand what was happening. She just clung to Snowdrift's neck as he began to walk slowly, moving away from the cursed property. The horse knew every trail, every shortcut in the region. His instincts guided him towards a safe place, where he knew he would find the help that Lily desperately needed. During the nocturnal walk, he stopped frequently to check if she was still conscious, whinnying softly, as if trying to reassure her. "Where are we going?" Lily whispered in a weak voice. But Snowdrift just continued walking with determination, carrying his precious cargo towards hope. Name Removed woke up before dawn with a strange feeling, as if something important was about to happen. The 63-year-old lived alone in a simple clapboard house on the outskirts of Harmony Creek, known throughout the region for her kindness and the home remedies she prepared with herbs from the yard. When she went out to fetch water from the well, she found a scene that left her breathless. A magnificent white horse was standing in her yard, and on his back a small and skeletal girl who looked more like a ghost. Snowdrift had walked all night, guided by instincts that led him to that house where he knew he would find help. "My God in heaven," whispered Name Removed, approaching slowly. "What child is this?" Lily was semi-conscious, her sunken and feverish eyes trying to focus on the kind face of the woman approaching. Name Removed immediately noticed the signs of severe malnutrition, the tattered and dirty clothes, the infected wounds on the girl's arms and legs. "Come, my child," said Name Removed in a sweet voice, stretching out her arms. "You are safe now." Snowdrift lowered himself carefully, allowing Name Removed to pick Lily up in her arms. The girl weighed less than a 2-year-old child, her little bones prominent through the pale skin. When Name Removed touched her, she felt the heat of the fever that was still burning in her fragile body. "What have they done to you, my little one?" murmured Name Removed, carrying Lily inside the house. The horse followed her to the door, as if he didn't want to leave the girl even for a moment. Name Removed put Lily in her own bed, covering her with clean and warm blankets. The girl opened her eyes briefly, trying to speak, but only an inaudible whisper came out of her parched lips. "Don't worry about talking now, child. First we'll take care of you," said Name Removed, preparing medicinal teas with herbs she always kept ready for emergencies. During the first days, Lily oscillated between consciousness and delirium. Name Removed didn't leave her side, giving her small sips of chamomile and lemon balm tea, cleaning her wounds with maternal care. They had raised 6 children and recognized a seriously traumatized child when she saw one. Snowdrift took up residence in Name Removed's yard, grazing on the grass and drinking water from the well, but always keeping his eyes fixed on the window of the room where Lily was recovering. The horse seemed to understand that his rescue mission had been accomplished, but his protective vigilance continued. On the 3rd day, Lily finally managed to take some chicken broth that Name Removed had prepared especially for her. It was at that moment that the girl spoke her first words since arriving. "The horse, did he bring me here?" she asked in a weak voice, her eyes searching for Snowdrift through the window. "Yes, my child, that 4-legged angel saved you," replied Name Removed, caressing the girl's tangled hair. "What's your name?" "Lily," the girl whispered, and then with tears in her eyes, "I want my daddy." Name Removed felt her heart tighten. For years she had developed an instinct to recognize stories of suffering. That child carried marks that went far beyond physical malnutrition. "Where is your daddy, child?" asked Name Removed gently. He gave me to the bad man," cried Lily, the painful memories coming back to the surface. "He said I was going to come back, but I never came back." During the following weeks, while Lily slowly recovered, Name Removed was piecing together the story through conversations with neighbors and acquaintances. The name of Hank Thompson was whispered with fear and contempt by the women at the market, who told stories about missing children and families destroyed by the merchants' cruel methods. "That man is a plague on this land," said Name Removed's neighbor during a visit. "I've heard of other children who disappeared after families owed him money." Lily, who was sitting in Name Removed's lap listening to the conversation, began to tremble violently. The mention of Hank's name awakened in her a terror that made her regress to the worst moments of her captivity. "Is he going to get me?" asked Lily, clinging to Name Removed's dress. "He said I am his property." "Nobody is anyone's property, my child," replied Name Removed, firmly hugging the girl. "You are under my protection now, and I won't let anyone hurt you." But Name Removed knew that the situation was more complicated than her reassuring words suggested. Hank had influence in the region, and if he found out where Lily was, he would certainly come to get her. They needed a plan to protect the girl permanently. During this recovery period, the relationship between Lily and Snowdrift deepened even further. Name Removed allowed the girl to go out to the yard to be with the horse and watched, fascinated by the silent communication between the two. Lily spoke to Snowdrift as if he were a person, telling him her fears and hopes, while the horse listened patiently, responding with low whinnies and gentle caresses with his muzzle. "You saved me," said Lily, hugging Snowdrift's neck. "You are my best friend in the whole world." The horse seemed to understand every word, and Name Removed realized that there was a special connection between the two that went beyond what she had ever seen between humans and animals. Gradually, Lily began to regain weight and color in her face. Name Removed fed her with patience, preparing small and frequent meals that her weakened stomach could process. The girl also began to smile timidly, especially when she was with Snowdrift. But the peace was interrupted one morning in August when Name Removed, owner of the local general store, appeared at Name Removed's house with worrying news. "Name Removed, there's a man in town asking about a lost girl," said Name Removed nervously. "It's Colonel Hank Thompson. He's offering money for information." Name Removed felt the blood run cold in her veins. Lily, who was playing in the yard with Snowdrift, hadn't heard the conversation yet, but the horse raised his head abruptly as if he sensed the danger approaching. "He can't take her," said Name Removed with determination. "That child was tortured, almost lost her life. I won't allow her to go back to that hell." "But Name Removed, what are you going to do? Hank has a lot of power, a lot of connections. If he wants, he can make your life a living hell too," warned Name Removed. Name Removed looked out the window and saw Lily running after a butterfly, Snowdrift walking slowly behind her to make sure she didn't fall. After months of suffering, the girl was finally beginning to be a child again. There was no force in the world that would make her hand Lily back to Hank. "Then we'll have to find a way to stop him once and for all," said Name Removed, her voice carrying a determination that surprised even herself. "This child deserves a decent life, and I'm going to fight for it." Snowdrift whinnied softly in the yard, as if approving the S words, while Lily ran to him, unaware that her newly won freedom was once again threatened. Sunday Mass at St. Sebastian's Church was particularly busy when Father Michael stepped up to the pulpit with a more serious expression than usual. The 58-year-old parish priest was known for his gentle sermons, but that day there was something different in his eyes. Name Removed was sitting in the back pews with Lily beside her, the girl still shy amidst so many people. Snowdrift waited outside the church, grazing calmly but always attentive to the movements around him. "My brothers and sisters," began Father Michael, his voice echoing through the stone walls. "Today, I need to talk about something that has tainted our community for too long. About children who disappear, families destroyed by unpayable debts, and men who take advantage of the despair of others." A murmur ran through the congregation. Hank Thompson, sitting in the front row as always, straightened up in his chair, realizing that the sermon might be directed at him. "A 4-year-old child was given as payment of debt, treated like a slave, almost left to languish to her ultimate consequences," continued the priest, his voice growing in intensity. "That child is among us today, saved by divine providence and the kindness of charitable souls." Everyone's eyes turned in different directions, trying to identify who the priest was talking about. Hank began to sweat, but maintained his external composure. Name removed, squeezed Lily's small hand, who shrank back in the pew, frightened by all the attention. The girl still didn't fully understand what was happening, but she felt the tension in the air. "And it wasn't just one child," declared Father Michael, revealing information he had collected in recent weeks through confessions and private conversations. "I discovered that other families have lost their children in the same way. Little Johnny from the old farm homestead disappeared 2 years ago after his father couldn't pay a gambling debt. The girl, Antonia, from the Silver family, was never seen again after her parents owed money for seeds that didn't germinate." The silence in the church was deafening. Hank tried to get up, but the pressure of the eyes of the entire congregation kept him in place. For the first time in years, the powerful man felt cornered. "Colonel Hank," said the priest, finally calling him by name, "do you have anything to say about these accusations?" Hank stood up slowly, trying to maintain his usual authority. "Father, these are serious and unfounded accusations. I have always conducted my business honestly." "Honestly?" replied Father Michael. "Is it honest to take a 4-year-old child from her father's arms and force her to work like an animal? Is it honest to leave a sick girl to languish in a corner, waiting for nature to take its course?" The priest's words fell like bombs on the congregation. Women began to cry, men clenched their fists, and an indignant murmur swept through the church. "I demand proof of these accusations," Hank shouted, losing his composure. "The proof is here," said Name Removed, standing up bravely and pulling Lily forward so that everyone could see her. "This is Lily Miller, daughter of Ben. See for yourselves the mark she carries." Lily, although frightened, allowed people to see the scars on her thin arms, the signs of malnutrition that were still visible even after months of care. The sight of the skeletal girl had a profound impact on the congregation. "And there's more," continued Father Michael. "During this week, 3 parents came to me in confession, telling how they were blackmailed into giving their children to Colonel Hank. Fear kept them silent, but Name Removed's courage inspired them to speak." Hank looked around and saw faces that once respected him out of fear, now staring at him with disgust and anger. His influence, built on intimidation and economic power, began to crumble publicly. "Are you going to believe the words of a naive priest?" Hank tried, but his voice sounded desperate. "I have brought prosperity to this region." "Prosperity," shouted Name Removed, the cowboy who had worked on Hank's property. "Prosperity, built on the blood and tears of innocent children. I saw, with my own eyes, what you did to that girl." Other workers who had been forced into silence for fear of losing their jobs began to speak out. Name Removed stood up, crying, and confirmed the mistreatment she had witnessed. Hank's situation deteriorated rapidly when Name Removed revealed that he had documented several suspicious transactions involving transfers of responsibility of children. The storekeeper, who had always paid bribes to keep his business running, now saw his network of corruption unraveling. "Where are the other children?" shouted a desperate mother. "What did you do with my son?" Hank tried to leave the church, but was surrounded by furious parents who demanded answers. The man who had once inspired fear now found himself completely isolated, his reputation destroyed in a matter of minutes. In the following days, the news spread throughout the region. Merchants refused to do business with Hank, workers abandoned his properties, and authorities from neighboring towns began to investigate his activities. During this turmoil, something beautiful happened at Name Removed's house. Ben Miller appeared on a rainy afternoon, thin and defeated by the guilt he had carried for months. The man had lost weight, his hair was graying, and his eyes carried the weight of remorse. "I came to get my daughter," he said with a choked voice, "if she will still accept me as a father." Lily was in the yard playing with Snowdrift when she saw the man who haunted her in dreams and nightmares. Her initial reaction was fear and anger, running to hide behind the white horse, who immediately positioned himself protectively. "She needs time," explained Name Removed to Ben. What happened left deep scars. For weeks, Ben worked as a farmhand in the town, visiting Lily every day without forcing an approach. He brought small gifts, told stories about the girl's mother, and slowly demonstrated that he had changed. Snowdrift, with his instinctive wisdom, was instrumental in this reconciliation. The horse allowed Ben to approach when he sensed that Lily was receptive, and intervened when he noticed that she was uncomfortable. The decisive moment came when Lily fell ill with a simple flu. Ben spent the whole night by her side, taking care of her with the love and dedication he should have, shown all along. When she woke up and saw her father holding her hand, she finally whispered the word he so longed to hear, "Daddy." The last twist came when they discovered that Hank had fled the region during the dawn, taking only what he could carry. His properties were confiscated to pay debts and compensations to the families of the exploited children. The man who had once been powerful was now a fugitive, destined to live hidden and in disgrace for the rest of his life. At the end of the year, Lily, Ben, and Snowdrift were a family again. The girl had recovered not only her physical health, but also her ability to trust and love. Ben, transformed by the experience, became a present and loving father, and Snowdrift continued to be the silent protector who united them. In the simple house where they restarted their lives, Lily ran through the yard while Snowdrift grazed, peacefully, always keeping an eye on her. Ben watched from the porch, knowing that he had received a second chance that he would never waste. Justice had prevailed, love had triumphed over cruelty, and a girl who almost lost everything had found her family again, protected forever by the four-legged angel who never abandoned her.